One of the things that we're fortunate to be able to do is to work with schools and communities all around the world. And we're going to share 16 programs that we believe are kind of changing the world of education, some of which we've been a part of and some of which we have heard of through other sources. The intent is to have you choose 4 or 5 of these and rate them rather than rank them. And so you can give them the same scores, and we'll hit that at the end here. But I'm going to start with a school in outside of Melbourne, Australia, Wooranna Park Primary School. It's a school that has fully embraced the Reggio Emilia process of education, starting in Italy, but now a global phenomenon. And it absolutely puts the learner at the center of all of the experiences in the school. You can go online and learn more about the wonderful things that are happening there and discover some of the exceptional things that young people are engaged in. The second school is the Elm School. It also has kind of a student-centered focus and an internationally minded but locally rooted school. So this is a school that I was fortunate to work with in Alexandria, Egypt, and the international nature of the work that happens there has students looking at big issues of morality and respect and inquiry, etc. But because of its roots in a Muslim culture in northern Egypt, those elements also are infused into life in that school. The affiliated High School of Beijing University is more than just in that setting. It's actually 20,000 students in a global network of schools. But these are young people who are doing research, publishing, patenting of their ideas. And that's the key component of this high school experience, is that you're expected to create evidence of what it is that you know. And the idea that you might start your own school or write novels or patent recent scientific discoveries of yours is the expectation of young people attending those schools. If you have heard at all about William and his windmill project in Malawi, this really kind of captures the sense of the learner passion driving what it is that's happening in a learning setting. I hesitate to say school because he was doing so much of this work independently, but there's several documentaries and TED Talks that you can learn more about William's work. In the US, there are many different schools across the US. The Christo Ray network has students working 1 day a week out in a professional setting. The Big Picture Learning Schools have students doing that twice a week. But in any case, the idea that learning happens beyond the walls of the school campus is a critical part to the success of those schools. In New Orleans, there's an interesting program called Our School at Blair Grocery. And this was in the 9th Ward, which was where the greatest extent of flooding happened in the Katrina hurricane. More than 20 feet of water, so that's somewhere in the order of 7 meters of water over top of that neighborhood. And what happened after the floodwaters retreated was that it was identified as a neighborhood at risk. Nearly everyone had been displaced. And the combination of needing to reestablish school and reestablish commerce came together in the Blair Grocery. It's a neighborhood grocery store. And so young learners there are running a grocery store. That's their school experience. They're also coordinating a large number of volunteers, operating a community garden. Related to that is a program called the Bronx Green Machine. And you can listen to Stephen Ritz speak with great passion about that in a TED Talk, but also in a book that he and Susie Voss wrote. And he has found ways to bring real food back into communities that are often food deserts, and bring in so much more than just the cultivation and consuming of the food into it, but the technology, the marketing, the nutrition, all of those things are integrated into the experience in that school. To take that to Paraguay, there's this really wonderful school that has begun with foundation support and now is entirely self-sufficient. And young people from throughout the region come to this school for free because they have a dozen or more different work opportunities on that campus. So they're running a farm and a dairy. They have honeybees that they take care of. There's a restaurant. There's a hotel on site, etc. And all of those on-campus experiences are things that young people are learning that they can take back to their villages and cities throughout the region, and not just in the form of best practices in sustainable agriculture, but integrating technology into that so that they have a sense of what the weather patterns are likely to be, what the moisture content of the soils are, what the market for the products that they're producing, et cetera. So it's really kind of a transformational school, and I hope you'd be interested in looking more into that. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, there's an interesting program called NuVu Studio, and students leave their traditional school setting and they drop into this program for 6 or more weeks, and it's all project-based learning all day long, and there's a focus on social issues in the community, design challenges that maybe individual students may have, fashion design out of found items, a wide range of things, a deep immersion in project-based learning. And in fact, many students who go through this program go back to their traditional schools and say, why can't all school be like this? And some of them have decided to complete their entire education at NuVu Studio. Many of you may have heard of the Hole in the Wall program. It began in India, again, has been experimented with all around the world. But this is where peers are teaching one another how to access the world of information. And again, you can see some really wonderful documentaries and TED Talks about this program. One of the interesting things is that they have experimented with the creation of a granny cloud. And so grandmothers will video into a classroom setting and offer up kind of thoughtful support and encouragement along the way. So they don't necessarily have the expertise, but they're inquisitive people who ask young people what they know, and the young people are responsible to the granny cloud for their feedback. I'm sure many of you have heard about Sal Khan's Khan Academy. Well, in addition to the online presence that he's cultivated over the last decade, he's also created a bricks and mortar school. And one of the intriguing things about this school is that students are kind of grouped by their level of independence. So it's not ability, and it's not content, and it's not age, but instead what's their level of independence that they have. And you have to kind of maintain that responsibility in order to continue to have the levels of independence that you aspire to as a learner. So a lot of really interesting things happening at that school. And again, you can learn much more online. There's a program that we've been fortunate to help support the development of called PBL Plus, the Alliance for Project-Based Learning Plus. And students that are engaged in this program from all around the world are working on projects that they have a personal passion for, and working with others who may or may not speak the same languages, seeking out the skills of other young people around the world. And the intent of this program is that a for-profit entity will harness the power of 1 billion young minds around the world and the freedom that they have to explore ideas. We clearly won't have 1 billion, but that's the aspiration. And to have that for-profit entity put up the dollars, use those young people as their research and development arm of their organization. And in the end, the young person, PBL Plus, and the for-profit entity will co-own the intellectual property rights of any of the ideas that emerge out of there. So a young person in Haiti, in Nepal, in Chicago, could be building a bank account for their entrepreneurial future or for their higher education or anything else that they might envision in their lives. Just a few more. There's a program in Canby, Oregon, the Canby Applied Learning Center. And this program took advantage of a change in need in what we typically would call shop class. They found that the spaces that they had were very expensive to operate, not very many students were enrolled in them, and only a very limited number of students even really had much interest in that. What they did instead was, in a brand new facility, they didn't just change the facility, but they changed the focus. So there's a bio-ag component because agriculture is an important part of that community. There was an engineering component because there were many simple engineering challenges around the community, crossing irrigation ditches and many other complicated things could be integrated into that, and a communication component. But the other key piece is that they placed core teachers, math, science, language arts, and social studies teachers in that setting along with the applied learning educators, and really ramped up the interest and relevance of the work that was being done. And now it's become the most oversubscribed program on the campus, because whether you envision your future in the trades or in the military or in higher education, that relevance of what it is that you're doing has become very important. There's an interesting program in Zambia where the students and the community and the educators built a school that met way more than just the needs of the K-12 students. So it includes housing and clinics and community gathering places, and it was actually built by the community as well. So different setting, but I think still kind of a model for thinking differently about the role of community in school. In Japan, I think the key piece about education in Japan is that teachers don't work alone, and they always have a master teacher as a mentor, and they give time in their school day to slow down the process, to share best practices with each other, to share reflections on how effective they were that day, and to kind of monitor all of that on a daily basis instead of a once a year kind of evaluation. A lot of other interesting things happening in Japan, but I think that's the core takeaways that I would hope you would explore. Similarly, in Finland, there's an expectation that if you're an educator, you have a master's degree, and that if you're an educator, you work as a team, not alone, and that your annual hourly workload is substantially less. So about 600 hours of contact time instead of 1,000 hours of contact time. As a result, you have a lot more time for that team collaboration, et cetera. There are lots of different books that have been written about what it's like to be teaching in Finland, and those would be a great resource if you're interested. So, after all of those different programs, what I'm hoping you'll do is choose 4 each, or as a group, choose 4, and then again, rate them on a scale of 5 being highly appropriate to 1 not appropriate, and you can see the differences in between. But then also tell us why. So it's not just that you gave 3 of the 4 a 2, but why is that maybe not appropriate for your community? So run through that. It's okay to give something a 0 if you really think it's not appropriate, but you can also provide some nuance. If you think something's a 4.4 instead of a 4 or a 5, let us know. And then we'll look forward to discussing this with you in the future.